Hello everyone, in today's video, I bring a breathtaking story that will deeply move you. Let's meet Nolan Wainwright, a young man who faced death not once, but 12 times, and came back with unbelievable revelations about heaven, hell, and the true purpose of life. What he discovered beyond this world will change everything you think about existence. So before we start, leave your like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any content like this, and activate the bell to receive all notifications. Now get ready, because this is a journey you will never forget. My name is Nolan Wainwright. I'm 29 years old, and until recently, I led a life that many would consider ordinary. I worked at a technology company in Austin, Texas, immersed in the frenetic routine that most people in this field know well. I woke up early, spent hours in front of the computer, struggled against tight deadlines, and at the end of the day I was too exhausted to do anything other than fall into bed and start over the next day. It wasn't that I was dissatisfied with my life. I liked my job, I had good friends and a loving family, but looking back now, I realized there was an emptiness, a feeling that something was missing. I didn't know exactly what, but I felt like there was more to life than this daily routine. I never imagined that a simple stomachache would completely change my perception of reality and the purpose of my existence. But that's exactly what happened when an intestinal infection brought me to death's door, or rather, sent me through them repeatedly. What I'm about to tell you may seem unbelievable to many. There are times when I even doubt whether everything really happened, but I can assure you that every word I will share is the purest truth of my experience. An experience that showed me that there is much more between heaven and earth than our vain philosophy dreams of, as Shakespeare would say. In just 3 days, my heart stopped 12 times. 12 times I left this physical world and immersed myself in a reality that defies our everyday understanding. 12 times I fluctuated between life and death, experiencing states of consciousness that completely transformed my view of the world, life, and death. On these journeys beyond the limits of our material world, I discovered that hell and heaven are not physical places, but emotional states that we create. I found answers to questions I didn't even know I had, and was given a mission that changed the course of my life. This is my story, a story of pain, fear, and uncertainty, but also of discovery, love, and purpose. It's the story of how almost dying taught me how to truly live. It all started with pain, a sharp pain in my abdomen that just wouldn't go away. At first, I thought it was just a passing illness, maybe something I had eaten, but as the hours passed, the pain only increased. I decided to go to the emergency room, hoping they would give me some medicine and send me home. But things weren't that simple. The doctors seemed confused, unsure of what was affecting me. They ran several tests, but nothing seemed conclusive. The pain continued to increase, and I was starting to feel weaker and weaker. That's when they decided to admit me. The hospital was a whirlwind of activity. Doctors and nurses came and went, always with worried expressions. I could feel the tension in the air, mixed with the distinctive smell of antiseptic. I heard snippets of conversations, medical terms that I didn't understand but that sounded increasingly serious. I remember thinking how strange it felt to be there, lying in that hospital bed, when just a few days before I had been worried about work deadlines and meetings. How can life change so quickly, right? Medical procedures followed, but nothing seemed to work. The infection, which we would later discover was extremely serious, continued to spread throughout my body. I could feel my strength slipping away with each passing hour. That's when things really started to get worse. I developed a severe allergic reaction to one of the antibiotics I was being given. Suddenly, my entire body felt like it was at war. My breathing became difficult. My skin began to break out and, most frighteningly, my heart began to fail. I remember the panic in the doctor's eyes when they realized what was happening. I heard someone yell, "Code Blue," and suddenly the room was full of people. Someone started doing compressions on my chest, while someone else prepared the defibrillator. It was at that moment that I had my first heart attack. The pain was indescribable, as if my chest was being crushed. I struggled to breathe. My vision began to darken at the edges. I heard distant voices as if they were coming from far away. And then, suddenly, Everything was silent. The pain disappeared. I felt a lightness I had never experienced before. That's when I realized something extraordinary was happening. I was leaving my body for the first time, beginning a journey that would change my life forever. When my heart stopped for the first time, a feeling of calm enveloped me. It was as if all the weights in the world had suddenly been lifted. The gravity, the worries, the pains, everything just disappeared. Suddenly I found myself floating above my own body. It was a surreal feeling, as if I were watching a movie in which I was the protagonist. Down below I saw my body inert on the hospital table. Doctors rushed around me, their voices muffled and distant. I watched with detached curiosity as they performed compressions on my chest and prepared the defibrillator. But what really captured my attention wasn't the physical scene below me. It was something I could never have imagined or predicted. I saw lines of light, like translucent tubes, connecting to the hospital from various directions. It was as if the building was the center of a luminous web. Intrigued, I focused on these lines of light and realized that each of them carried an intention, an energy. With a shock of realization, I understood that I was seeing prayers. Each light beam represented someone praying for me at that moment. It was a powerful revelation. Prayers were not just words thrown to the wind or vague thoughts. They were real, tangible energies that moved through space and time to reach me. He could feel the love, concern, and hope contained within each beam of light. I saw a particularly bright beam and somehow knew it was coming from my mother. Another, a little more tenuous, but equally full of love, was from my father. I recognized the energy of my friends, co-workers, and even people I barely knew but who had heard about my situation and decided to send good thoughts. In that moment, I understood that we are all connected in ways that go beyond our everyday understanding. Every thought, every intention, has a real impact on the world around us. It was as if I could see the invisible web that binds us all together. As I floated there, watching this dance of lights and energies, I felt a deep gratitude. Gratitude for all these people who were sending their positive energy to me. Gratitude for life. Gratitude for this unique opportunity to see beyond the veil of physical reality. But then, as suddenly as it had begun, the experience ended. I felt a tug, as if something was calling me back. With a shock, I found myself back in my body, panting and disoriented. The doctors seemed relieved. They had managed to bring me back. I wanted to tell them what I had seen, explain the beauty and depth of what I had experienced. But words failed me. How can we describe something so far beyond our everyday reality? In that moment, all I could do was smile, grateful to be alive and transformed by this first foray beyond the boundaries of life and death. My heart stopped for the second time a few hours after the first experience. This time, instead of floating above the hospital, I found myself in a completely different space. It was a white and luminous void, with no horizon or visible limits. And there, in the middle of this ethereal space, was my grandfather, Elias Wainwright. My grandfather had passed away 10 years earlier, but there he was, just as I remembered. He had the same strong posture, the same gentle look that always calmed me when I was a child. He was wearing a gray suit, his favorite, and he was smiling at me with a mixture of love and something else. Wisdom, understanding. It was difficult to define. "Nolan," he said, his voice exactly as I remembered, "it's not your time yet." I stood still, absorbing his words and his presence. It was surreal being there, talking to my late grandfather as if we were just meeting for coffee. "Grandpa," I finally managed. "What's going on? Where are we?" He smiled again, a smile full of understanding. "That doesn't matter now, Nolan. What matters is that you have something bigger to do. Your journey on Earth is not over yet." His words took me by surprise. Something bigger to do? What kind of mission could be so important that it would bring me back from the dead? As if reading my thoughts, my grandfather continued, "You need to connect more deeply with yourself, Nolan. There is a purpose waiting for you, something only you can achieve. I was silent, trying to process it all. My grandfather came over and put his hand on my shoulder. His touch was surprisingly real, warm, and comforting. "When you get back," he said, "tell your grandmother I'm waiting for her. Her time is coming." These words hit me like a shock. My grandmother, Elijah's wife, was still alive. How could he know when her time would be? "Grandpa, I started, but he gently interrupted me. "Trust the journey, Nolan. Everything will make sense in due time. Now, you need to go back." Before I could say anything else, my grandfather's figure began to dissipate, like mist being blown away by the wind. The white space around me began to darken. "Grandpa!" I shouted, but my voice seemed distant even to myself. Suddenly, I felt a familiar tug and found myself back in my body in the hospital. The doctors were around me again, looking exhausted but relieved. I had returned once again. As I caught my breath, my grandfather's words echoed in my mind. I had a mission. Something bigger awaited me. And somehow, I knew that my life would never be the same. During one of the subsequent cardiac arrests, I've lost count of exactly which one, I had an experience that completely challenged my understanding of reality. I found myself transported to a place I can only describe as a vast spiritual coliseum. Imagine a Roman amphitheater, grand and majestic, but instead of stone, it seemed to be made of light. The stands stretched as far as the eye could see, in concentric circles that seemed to go on to infinity. But it was not ordinary spectators who occupied these seats. The Colosseum was filled with beings dressed in white, emanating an aura of wisdom and serenity that left me in a state of awe. They moved with a grace and purpose that I couldn't decipher. Some seemed to be in deep meditation. Others were talking in low, melodious voices that I couldn't understand. As I watched in wonder, I realized I recognized some of these beings, not in a personal way, but as if they were old acquaintances from other lives. I saw philosophers from ancient Greece, spiritual masters from the East, wise men from cultures I didn't even know. Suddenly, one of these beings turned towards me. His presence was so powerful that I felt as if the entire Colosseum had gone silent. "Nolan," he said, his voice ringing not just in my ears but in my entire being. "You need to understand what reincarnation really is." The moment he spoke those words, the entire Colosseum seemed to transform. The stands dissolved and I found myself floating in a vast cosmic space. All around me, I saw countless bubbles of light, each containing what appeared to be a soul. I watched, fascinated, as these bubbles of light traveled from one body to another, from one planet to another, from one time to another. I saw lives unfold in a matter of seconds. Births, deaths, joys, sadness, all in an endless cycle. It was then that I understood. It was not the soul that reincarnated, but the mind. The soul, eternal and unchanging, watched as the mind, trapped in cycles of suffering and illusion, repeated stories and created emotional prisons for itself. This revelation hit me like a wave. I realized that many of the pains and conflicts we carry are not just from this life, but echoes of past experiences that our minds continue to replay. I saw how we cling to patterns of behavior, fears and resentments that span multiple existences. But I also saw the beauty in this process. Each life was an opportunity for learning, for growth. Some souls seemed to dance through incarnations, learning and evolving with grace. Others struggled, trapped in cycles of pain, but always with the possibility of breaking these patterns. As I watched this cosmic spectacle, I felt a deep compassion for all humanity. I understood that we are all on this journey together, each at their own stage of evolution, but all heading towards the same final destination. The being that had spoken to me earlier appeared next to me. "See now, Nolan?" he asked. "Reincarnation is not a punishment, nor a simple repetition. It is an opportunity for consciousness to evolve, for the mind to free itself from its own illusions." I nodded, feeling at once small in the face of the vastness of the universe and an integral part of it. But how can we break these cycles? I asked. The being smiled, a smile that seemed to illuminate the entire cosmos, through love, compassion, and self-knowledge. When you truly understand who you are, when you let go of fears and attachments, the mind becomes still, and when the mind is still, the soul can shine in all its glory. With those words, the cosmic scenery began to dissipate. I found myself back in the spiritual Colosseum, but now I saw it with new eyes. Each being there was not just an individual, but a consciousness that had traversed countless lifetimes to reach that point of wisdom and serenity. As I felt like I was about to return to my body, I took with me a deep understanding of the cyclical nature of existence and the infinite potential that each of us carries. This experience in the spiritual Colosseum was not just a lesson in reincarnation, but a glimpse into the vastness and interconnectedness of all things. 6. The truth about hell and heaven. One of the most impactful experiences during my journeys between life and death was when I finally understood the true nature of hell and heaven. Everything I thought I knew about these concepts was completely transformed. In one of my cardiac arrests, I found myself plunged into oppressive darkness. At first, I thought I was simply unconscious, but I soon realized I was experiencing something much deeper and more disturbing. I felt a crushing weight on me, as if all the sadness and pain in the world were pressing down on me. I heard distant screams, wails of agony that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The air was heavy, suffocating, filled with a smell of despair and regret. For a moment I thought, that's it, I'm in hell. But then, something extraordinary happened. In the midst of all that darkness and despair, I heard a voice. It wasn't an external voice, but it seemed to come from within myself. Hell, said the voice, is the suffering you create yourself by holding on to hate and pain. In that instant, everything became clear. Hell was not a physical place of eternal torment. It was a mental state, an emotional prison that we created for ourselves. I saw how our hurts, our resentments, our anger accumulated throughout our lives, created this environment of suffering. There were no demons torturing me, just the shadows of the pain I myself carried. Every scream I heard was the echo of an unresolved hurt. Every weight I felt was a guilt that I refused to release. This realization was both frightening and liberating. Scary because I realized how much suffering we inflict on ourselves. Liberating because I understood that if hell was our creation, we also had the power to free ourselves from it. Once I accepted this truth, the darkness began to lift. The weight on me became lighter. And then, I experienced something completely different. I found myself surrounded by a soft and welcoming light. There were no defined shapes, just a feeling of absolute peace. And the most surprising thing, there were no thoughts, there were no voices. For the first time, I experienced total silence of the mind. In this state, I understood that this was heaven, not a place of eternal pleasures or rewards, but a state of being where the mind finally quiets, where there are no judgments. There is no past or future, just the present moment in all its fullness. In heaven, I felt connected to everything. There was no separation between me and the rest of the universe. It was as if every atom of my being was in perfect harmony with all of existence. The peace I felt at that moment is indescribable in human words. I then realized that heaven, like hell, was not a final destination, but a state that we can reach here and now. When we let go of our attachments, our expectations, our fears, we can experience glimpses of this heavenly state even in our everyday lives. This experience completely changed my outlook on life after death. I understood that we are not condemned to an eternal destiny based on our actions, but that we continue our journey of growth and evolution even beyond this life. Hell and heaven are states that we constantly create and experience, depending on our mental and emotional state. When I came back from this experience, I felt a deep gratitude and a renewed sense of responsibility. Gratitude for having glimpsed these truths, and responsibility to live in a way that brings me closer to heaven and away from the hell we create for ourselves. This revelation became one of the pillars of my new life mission. Helping people understand that they have the power to break free from their own emotional hells and find inner peace has become one of my main goals. Because now I know, true paradise is not a place we go, but a state we can achieve here and now. In one of my most surprising experiences during my journey between life and death, I was led to a vision that drastically expanded my understanding of life in the universe. It was a revelation that challenged everything I thought I knew about our existence and our place in the cosmos. In the blink of an eye, I found myself floating in the vast void of space. But he wasn't alone. All around me I saw a myriad of worlds, each pulsing with life. Planets of all colors and sizes, some familiar, others completely alien to my earthly eyes. In each of these worlds, I was able to observe life forms. Some were surprisingly similar to beings on Earth. Others were so different that they defied description in human terms. I saw creatures of pure light, beings made of gas, entities that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. The most fascinating thing was that despite their physical differences, there was a familiarity to them all. It was as if, somehow, we were all connected, all sharing the same cosmic origin. I realized that life, in all its diversity, was a universal constant. As I watched, I understood that the universe was vast and filled with life beyond Earth, each being at different levels of spiritual evolution. Some were so advanced that they seemed almost divine to my human eyes, capable of shaping reality with the power of their thoughts. Others were just beginning their evolutionary journey, taking their first steps into consciousness. A voice, which seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, spoke to me. See, Nolan, the vastness of creation. Every being, every world, every galaxy is a unique expression of the same universal love. I was amazed at the beauty and complexity of what I was seeing. I realized that our view of life in the universe was incredibly limited. We were like ants, trying to understand an entire ecosystem based just on our little anthill. The voice continued, "You Earthlings are not alone. You never have been. All beings, on all worlds, are connected. All are part of the same cosmic web of life and consciousness." I then saw how entire civilizations evolved, not just technologically, but spiritually. Some had completely transcended the need for physical bodies, existing as pure energy and consciousness. Others had achieved a level of harmony with their planets that made our relationship with Earth seem primitive by comparison. But the most important thing I learned from this vision was that, despite all this diversity, there was a common thread uniting all these forms of life: love. Not the romantic or familial love we know on Earth, but a cosmic love, a force of connection and mutual understanding that transcended physical and cultural barriers. I understood that our purpose, as conscious beings, was not just to evolve individually, but to contribute to the evolution of all universal consciousness. Every act of kindness, every moment of understanding, every step toward harmony on our little planet had an impact on the entire cosmos. As the vision began to fade, I took with me a new perspective on our place in the universe. We weren't the center of everything, as many of us like to think, but we weren't insignificant either. We were a vital part of something much larger, each of us carrying a spark of universal consciousness. This experience left me with a deep sense of responsibility. I realized that each of our actions, each thought, each choice, has an impact that goes far beyond our immediate understanding. We are, all of us, guardians of a small part of the cosmic consciousness, with the duty to nurture it and make it grow. I came back from this vision with a new mission: to help people understand their connection with the universe, to realize that we are all part of something much bigger. Because in the end, I understood that our true home is not just this planet, but the entire cosmos. After all these extraordinary experiences, my final return to life was equally surprising and transformative. It was during my last cardiac arrest that something truly unusual happened, something doctors still can't fully explain. The doctors were fighting to bring me back, using the defibrillator once again. I felt the shock go through my body, pulling me back to physical reality, but unlike the other times, something else happened the moment I returned to my body. As soon as I opened my eyes, I was overcome by a wave of nausea. Before anyone could react, I vomited a bright blue substance. The doctors and nurses were perplexed. Nothing in my diet or the medications I was receiving could explain that color or consistency, but I knew exactly what it was. During my out-of-body experiences, I had seen my mother and sister praying for me, visualizing blue light surrounding my body, asking for healing. That blue substance was the physical manifestation of those prayers, those healing energies that had been sent to me. The moment I expelled that substance, I felt a dramatic change in my body. The pain that had been tormenting me for days began to quickly subside. My breathing, which had been difficult and painful, became easier and deeper. It was as if every cell in my body was being bathed in healing energy. The doctors, of course, couldn't believe what they were seeing. They rushed to take new tests, trying to understand what was happening. To his surprise, the infection that was consuming me began to regress at an unprecedented speed. My organs, which were on the verge of collapse, began to recover. In the hours and days that followed, my recovery was nothing short of miraculous. Symptoms that should have taken weeks to disappear were gone in a matter of days. My strength quickly returned, and I was soon walking through the hospital corridors, to the amazement of everyone who had followed my case. But the healing wasn't just physical. I felt a profound transformation in my being. The experiences I had during my journeys between life and death had fundamentally changed my perspective on existence. I felt more connected to everything and everyone around me. He had a clarity of purpose that I had never experienced before. Doctors were finally able to properly diagnose and treat my condition, but everyone agreed that my recovery went beyond any conventional medical explanation. Many of them reached out to me privately, curious about my experiences, seeking to understand what had happened. As I prepared to leave the hospital, I reflected on everything I had experienced. I knew I was no longer the same person who had walked into that emergency room days before. He had died and been reborn, not just physically, but spiritually. The blue substance I expelled became a powerful symbol for me, a tangible reminder of the power of prayer, healing energy, and the interconnectedness of all things. I understood that my healing was not just the result of medical intervention, but a combination of science, spirituality, and the love of those who cared about me. I left the hospital not only healed, but transformed. I carried with me not only gratitude for the life that was given back to me, but also a deep sense of purpose. I knew I had been spared for a reason, that the experiences I had were not just for me, but to be shared and used to help others. The healing I experienced was holistic, physical, mental, and spiritual. My body had recovered in a way that doctors considered almost impossible. My mind was clear and focused like never before. And my spirit, well, my spirit had been completely renewed. In the days following my discharge from the hospital, I spent a lot of time reflecting on everything I had experienced. Every memory, every vision, every revelation became a piece of a larger puzzle. I began to understand that my journey back to life was not the end, but just the beginning of something much bigger. After my near-death experience and subsequent miraculous recovery, it became clear to me that my life had changed forever. I couldn't just go back to my old routine as if nothing had happened. The revelations I had, the truths I discovered about the nature of reality and our existence, were too great to ignore. It was during my convalescence at home, surrounded by the love and care of my family, that I began to formulate what my new mission in life would be. I remembered my grandfather Elias' words during our meeting in the afterlife. "You have something greater to do." Now I understood what he meant. The idea came to me with surprising clarity. I needed to open a spiritual rehabilitation center. Not an ordinary center focused only on physical recovery or addiction treatment, but a place where people could heal holistically, body, mind, and spirit. My vision was to create a space where people could not only recover from their physical illnesses and addictions, but also find healing from the emotional prisons that create their own internal hells. a place where they could learn to forgive, reconnect with their souls, and find a greater purpose in their lives. I shared this idea with my family and close friends. Initially, there was skepticism. After all, I had no experience in healthcare management or therapy. But as I shared my experiences and my vision, I saw skepticism turn to enthusiasm and support. In the following months, I dedicated myself entirely to making this dream come true. I studied intensely, seeking knowledge in different areas: psychology, spirituality, alternative therapies, health management. I contacted renowned professionals, sharing my vision and seeking guidance. Surprisingly, many doors opened. People who heard my story offered to help. A family friend, impressed by my determination, offered land on the outskirts of the city to build the center. Healthcare professionals, inspired by the idea, volunteered to be part of the team. Finally, after months of planning, fundraising, and preparation, the New Dawn Spiritual Rehabilitation and Renewal Center opened its doors. The name was a tribute to my own journey, a new dawn after the darkness of near death. The center embodied everything I had learned from my experiences. We offered conventional therapies combined with spiritual practices. We had spaces for meditation, yoga, and other contemplative practices. We offered workshops on forgiveness, self-knowledge, and life purpose. One of the most important aspects of the center was the Healing the Hell Within program. Based on my own experience of seeing hell as a self-imposed emotional state, this program helped people identify and overcome the negative thought patterns, fears, and resentments that held them back. As the center grew and more people came through our programs, I began to see incredible results. People who arrived broken, trapped in cycles of pain and self-destitution, left transformed. I have seen addicts not only overcome their addictions, but find a new purpose in life. I have seen people with chronic illnesses experience amazing improvements in their health as they heal their emotional wounds. But perhaps the most rewarding aspect of all this work was seeing people rediscover their connection to something bigger. Seeing the sparkle in the eyes of someone who finally understands that they are part of something vast and wonderful, that their life has a purpose beyond their perceived limitations, was a deeply moving experience. As the center gained recognition, I was invited to give talks, appear on TV shows, and write articles. I used every opportunity to share my message, that we all have the power to free ourselves from our emotional prisons, that love and forgiveness are the keys to true healing, and that each of us is a vital part of universal consciousness. Looking back at the man I was before that fateful intestinal infection, I can hardly believe the journey I've been on. From a technology professional focused only on deadlines and projects, I transformed into someone dedicated to helping others find healing and purpose. My new mission brought a sense of accomplishment that I had never experienced before. Each day brought new challenges, of course, but also new opportunities for growth and learning. And with each person we were able to help, I felt like I was honoring the gift of the second chance I received. Today, years after my near-death experience, I still find myself reflecting on everything I lived and learned. Each day is an opportunity to deepen my understanding and share these lessons with others. One of the most important things I've learned is that life is much more than our physical existence on this planet. We are multidimensional beings, connected to a vast network of consciousness that extends throughout the universe. Each of us carries within us a spark of this universal consciousness, a direct connection with the divine. Another crucial lesson is the understanding that we create our own reality. Hell and heaven are not physical places we go after death, but states we experience here and now based on our choices, thoughts, and actions. We have the power to transform our inner hell into a paradise of peace and love if we choose to do the work necessary. Reincarnation, which was once just an abstract concept for me, is now a tangible reality. I understood that it is not the soul that reincarnates, but the mind, carrying with it unlearned lessons and unresolved patterns. Each life is an opportunity for growth, to break old patterns and to evolve spiritually. I also learned about the interconnection of all things. Every thought, every action, no matter how small, has an impact on the whole. We are all part of a great cosmic web, where what affects one affects everyone. This understanding brings with it a great responsibility to live consciously, with love and compassion for all beings. The experience of seeing the vastness of the universe and the diversity of life on other worlds taught me humility. I realized how small we are in the grand scheme of things, but at the same time, how important we are as guardians of our own spark of divine consciousness. The power of prayer and positive intention became a tangible reality for me. I saw how our thoughts and intentions can manifest in tangible ways, as demonstrated by the blue substance I expelled during my miracle healing. It taught me the importance of cultivating positive thoughts and sending love and light to those who need it. Perhaps the most profound lesson I learned is about love, not the romantic or familial love that we know in our human experience, but a cosmic, unconditional love that is the very essence of the universe. This love is the force that unites us, that heals us, that drives us to evolve. My near-death journey taught me that we should not fear death, but rather live fully every moment we have. Death is not the end, but a transition, a passage to another state of being. What really matters is how we live, how we love, how we grow spiritually during our earthly journey. Today, I live each day with gratitude and purpose. Gratitude for the second chance I received, for the gift of being able to share these truths with others, and purpose in helping people awaken to their true nature, free themselves from their emotional prisons and find peace and love in their lives. My near-death experience was not the end of one journey, but the beginning of a new one. A journey of self-discovery, of service to others, of connection with the divine. It is a journey that continues every day, with each person who passes through our center, with each life that is touched and transformed. If there is one final message I would like to share, it is this. You are more than your physical body, more than your mind, more than your experiences in this life. You are a unique and precious expression of universal consciousness. You have the power to transform your reality, to heal your wounds, to transcend your limits. Everything you need is within you. Just wake up to this truth and live from it. My story is just one of many. Each of us has our own journey, our own lessons to learn, our own truths to discover. My hope is that by sharing my experience, I can inspire others to seek their own answers, to open themselves to the mystery and beauty of existence. Because in the end, it doesn't matter how long we live, but how we live. It's not how many possessions we accumulate, but how much love we share. It doesn't matter how far we travel in the outer world, but how deeply we delve into our inner world. Life is a precious gift, an opportunity to grow, love, and evolve. My near-death experience taught me to value every moment, to see the beauty in every experience, to find the divine in every person. And that is the message I hope to leave with the world. Live with love, live with purpose, live aware of your true divine nature. Because in the end, that's what really matters. If you like this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment on your impressions, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell to watch each new video and help us spread this message to a greater number of people. Until next time.